Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Double 18 podcast. I'm your host, Stephen Nagishi. To my right on your YouTube screen is the aforementioned my co-host from Awful Announcing, the associate editor, Ken Feng. And Ken, good afternoon. We're doing a little bit earlier than the usual time slot today. Um, this was a kind of a request by Ken, and I was happy to oblige today. Ken, how you doing today? How was your
Good.
week?
How are you? Nice to be on. And we, depending on the situation, we may go a little early the next few weeks because of NCAA tournament and my schedule. But we'll keep you posted. Uh, just to also let you know, I no longer post on X. I have decided to my account is still open, but I am no longer posting actively on X. It will still be the regular feeds to an additional RSS feed for awful announcing. And if you have to DM me or need to get in touch with me, I will respond to DMs on X. But for the most part, I have retired of I'm tired of stuff on going on X on the discourse there. So I am going to be on Blue Sky. So if you're on Blue Sky, you can find me there, and I will also post the live links to our live stream, which I have been doing anyway on Blue Sky. But you can still find the links to the live um, streams will be on X, and the links to the YouTube will be on Blue Sky. So we hope you, no matter where, find us. You know where to find us.
hmm Well, thanks for that update, Ken. And we hope that those, Ken has already been mentioning that on the Blue Sky every time when we go live. So hopefully you will continue to follow him there for the time being. All right, let's move on to our first topic today. The start of the NFL free agency kicked off this Tuesday, I believe. No, it was Monday. I apologize.
Here's my
The league period and began, and certainly the big story, of course, has been the money that is being thrown around, but as well as the big trade that really never happened. Now, Max Crosby to the Ravens. That was a huge deal when it was mentioned out of nowhere. My Bears were being involved in a for quite some time. Caleb Williams and Max Crosby has a strong bond and a relationship. They played each other last year, in which the Bears barely beat the Raiders. Max Crosby was was wreaking havoc, I should say, throughout the game. He went to his podcast. That's Williams recently went to Crosby's podcast as if it was like some sort of like a quasi recruiting trip, of course. And shockingly, he went to the Ravens. There were some, speculation as to where he was going, but it was the Ravens who ended up getting him for 2 first-round picks, like the Raiders were demanding. But then, I believe this was Wednesday night, it was Wednesday night on the very first day of the official legal signing period. The Ravens decided to do a reverse Uno and cancel the trade. So that trade collapsed. And then, funny thing is, the very next day, they ended up signing Trey Hendrickson from the Cincinnati Bengals. So he, unfortunately, to your Cleveland Browns, Ken, and we'll talk about our favorite teams in a minute, but he ended up leaving Cincinnati only to stay with the NFC North. That 4-year, $112 million contract. Obviously, both players coming off a serious injury to their this past year. Of course, Hendrickson has been at odds with the frugal Cincinnati Bengals and Mike Brown for the last couple of years. Certainly leaves and stays in the division. Certainly does give a credence to some of the conspiracy theory that they always wanted to, sign Hendrickson, but Crosby's so-called knee injury that he suffered and he was still recovering from, and all of that was a cop out to the to pull the rug on this deal, because Trey Hendrickson, wasn't exactly the guy that was getting the big bucks, right out of the gate in the free agency, of course. And it does kind of feel weird talking about the Ravens. And the team, obviously, being a Browns fan, always giving your team a hard time all these years. And certainly, I think a lot of people are, widely criticizing the Ravens for what they did. Certainly, I think the medicals that they were sharing, I don't think it's, one doctor is saying this and that. And, actually, it's funny because they were actually relying on the Dallas Cowboys team physician for the reports. And ironically, the Cowboys were also involved in this, discussion for, Max Crosby until the very last moment before they ended up selling for Rashad Gray from the Green Bay Packers.
Right.
So what do you think about this whole trade collapse? And do you feel like the Ravens, significantly ruined their reputation in all of this, the way they handled this? Because I kind of feel do, in my opinion. What do you say to you?
They definitely hurt their credibility. Diana Rossini criticized the insider for the Athletic, criticized the Ravens organization, and they pretty much knew that what they were getting with Max Crosby. I mean, this is not a secret that he had a knee surgery, and that he wanted out of the Raiders. And the fact is that you traded your first 2-round picks for him, the 2-round picks, first rounders. And, the Raiders then went out saying, hey, we no longer have his money on the cap. Let's go spend in free agency. And that's what they did. And then all of a sudden, Crosby is back. And now they have to figure out how they're going to have to, work Crosby back under the cap. If they decide to keep him, are they going to try to trade him again? What's going to happen here? So it's really strange. Also, Tom Brady, who's supposed to be part of the Raiders organization, hoping to run things, he doesn't look great on here either, if he was the one that decided to pull the trigger on this trade. I have to say, Stephen, that the Ravens didn't help themselves. And I know that they pretty much said, oh, well, we saw that we gave him a physical and there were things we didn't like. No, you had all the information there. You had all the reports. Crosby is not a person that was trying to hide anything. He was pretty transparent about his injury. He was on Instagram showing the whole process of, his knee surgery and trying to rehab from it. So I don't know what the Ravens were pulling here. And yeah, I do believe that Hendrickson was their target all along. But, to who wants to deal with the Ravens now after this? Are they, who wants to trade with them? It's just one of those situations where I don't care if the Ravens feel that they got the guy they wanted to all along. If you're going to call somebody and say, hey, I want to trade for you, I think twice about dealing with them. I say, you know what? I don't think I would say, hey, you know what? I'm going to call somebody else. You know what? Or, be like Bill Parcells when the Jets were calling him to try, or the Patriots are trying to call him in regards to getting, compensation for Bill Belichick. I was just basically say, you know what? I'm not here. I'm not here to tell him that to call somebody else. So I would not be on the phone. I'd just say, I don't want to take your phone call. So, yeah, the Ravens have definitely, at least for the short term, have definitely hurt their reputation, at least for this season. I mean, maybe memories are short sometimes, but in this case, executives remember this type of thing. And
Right.
No matter where you work, and no matter what organization you're dealing with, if you pull the rug off a trade like this by, first of all, trading your picks and then all of a sudden reneging them and then getting the guy you want and then keeping the picks all along, it just stinks to high heaven. It really does.
Oh yeah, it really does. And yeah, I do believe that for the most part, the Ravens, has always been somewhat of a model of consistency. With Ozzie Newsome and then John Harbaugh, manning the team for a long, long time. They won 2 Super Bowls. They've been to the playoffs multiple times ever since they left Cleveland. Sorry to you, Ken, and became the Baltimore Ravens in 1996. Pretty much, they've been a model of consistency. They've been, again, meant to the playoffs many, many times, won the division. They've drafted very, very well. There's no question about it. For a long, long time under Ozzie Newsome, and after Ozzie Newsome retired, Eric DaCosta. It's an envious situation to be in. But yeah, I do believe that the Ravens' credibility takes a massive hit, pretty much. With the departure of John Harbaugh, and certainly the way they handle business, and then pull the rug underneath, the Raiders. After they consumed the trade, and the Raiders made all kinds of signing, headlined by Tyler Lindenbaum, ironically, who left Baltimore to sign with the Raiders for a 3-year, $81 million deal, and a host of others that that team certainly, coming off a 3-win season, needs all the help that they can get. And for the Crosby trade to get pulled under, I'm sure they had the idea that the salary that was vacated by Crosby, that had to be taken into consideration when they were signing free agents, just before they were doing the illegal tampering. And now still, Crosby ends up going back. It certainly doesn't hurt the Raiders from a moral perspective, because, Crosby is their leader, thick and through, even though the team has been just a disaster, firing and hiring, general managers and head coaches almost every other year, pretty much. When they were in Oakland, and then now even after they moved to Vegas. So, they still have Max Crosby. The team looks decent now on paper. About a month ahead of the NFL draft, where they're expected to, stay with the number 1 overall pick and draft, Fernando Mendoza, like many of us do expect them to. So. Yeah, I do believe that the Ravens are taking a massive hit off season wise, and obviously, certainly the way with the departure of Jim Harbaugh, certainly notwithstanding, I think the Ravens are no longer an organization that's on the that has done consistently been productive and has been a contender. Now, they have a blemish on their record, at least in the eyes of 31 other teams. And, you don't want to be doing business with them, like you said, certainly. So very, very curious how the Ravens proceed moving forward. Back to the Max Crosby situation. I know he's back, and he's made it clear that he will be committed to 100%. This upcoming season. He's going to attack the rehab, and then he'll be, super motivated, obviously, with the, the deal that fell through, and certainly, unfortunately for Crosby, the opportunity to play for, a solid organization will probably not going to happen, but I don't know if this is the last time we're going to hear Max Crosby's trade rumor, because I do believe that it will happen at some point sooner rather than later. Now, will my Bears still be in it? I have no idea, to be honest. And I think even if the trade were to happen, I think it will happen just before maybe, the start of 2026 season. Do you think Max Crosby will still be a Raider?
I think Steven is Steven's had a little trouble there with the freezing and everything, but no, I don't think he's going to be with the Raiders. I honestly think that there may be a draft. They might do a deal around NFL draft time. If the Raiders can find another buyer, and every team needs a rusher. We all know this.
Right, pass rusher, yes.
Yeah, every team needs a rusher. So if they could put a package together, now maybe they're not going to get 2 first-rounders like they did with the Ravens, But if they could get a first rounder and maybe a couple of second round picks down the road, maybe that's a possibility here. So I would think that I think that the Raiders are still going to be looking to deal Max Crosby. I think they're going to keep things close to the vest, and it's going to be interesting to see how that happens, Steven. So I think that I don't think Max Crosby is going to be with the Raiders come opening day in September. I still think that the Raiders are going to try to trade him. Interestingly enough, other interesting moves in the during this tender period during this signing period. Tua Tagovailoa got cut by the Miami Dolphins almost right after our show, and then Monday or Tuesday signed with Atlanta. Geno Smith went back to the Jets. Jets fans are angry about that move, but you know who do the Jets have? They need somebody. They need. I mean, basically, Geno Smith looks like going to be thrown to the wolves while the Jets try to look for another quarterback. So those are interesting moves there. Those are two high-profile moves. Of course, we know that Kirk Cousins is no longer going to be with Atlanta with a Tua Tagovailoa move. But I interestingly think that with some of the moves over there, Atlanta, it's going to be interesting where Kirk Cousins goes. And then
Minnesota probably is out of the option since they signed Kyler Murray.
That was a strange move too. Kyler Murray is a guy who should be a good. I mean, we've seen flashes of brilliance with him, Steven, but he just doesn't seem to be committed to try and improve. Maybe a change of scenery will help him. We'll have to see what goes on with him, and of course, there's some other big names out there that'll be interesting to see what happens. Green Bay's backup.
Malik Wells goes to Miami. That was a move that was expected. Yes.
Yeah, that was expected. And, we saw how well he played with the Packers. I know that you hated seeing him, come in because he would play better than Jordan.
Bears a lot of trouble. In that big game against them on just before Christmas. That was crazy, by the way.
Yeah. So some interesting moves there, and of course we still don't know. Stephon Diggs was cut by the New England Patriots up here. That was a big talk up here, where I live, and of course now we don't know where DJ Moore is going to go. There's all this talk about.
Well, no, he got traded to Buffalo.
He got traded to Buffalo. Okay, so he got traded to Buffalo. Right. So some interesting moves, and of course we're going to be hearing about more moves as free agent frenzy continues. Of course, there's going to be more moves ahead, but of course now we get into draft period time, Steven, and as we come into the next month is going to be draft period. That's going to be fun to watch. So the NFL continues, but free agent frenzy. A lot of great moves happened last week, and like I said, it's going to be interesting to see what happens, and we'll see how our teams continue to do as they look for more holes to fill. And every team has a hole to fill. No one can say that we are exactly where we need to be, and it's really too early because they have the draft upcoming next month, and of course there'll be more signings as they get closer to when training camp starts in July and August.
Right. Among the notable players moving to a new team, Kenneth Walker goes to the Chiefs. Many expected that to happen. Certainly had a huge season and also had a big Super Bowl as well. Jalen Phillips goes to Carolina after being from Miami to trade it to the Eagles, and a massive big deal contract. Got a bigger one than the trade Hendricks, certainly because he's younger, but he has had some injury problems. For a guy who's only 26, 27 years old this year. So that's a massive gamble for Carolina. There's no way in hell my Bears were going to ever, come close to matching those numbers, by the way, anyway, at this point. So, and then also the stunner, Mike Evans ended up leaving
Tampa Bay.
Tampa, to go to another Bay, San Francisco. Um, 3 years, $60+ million. Certainly, it kind of felt like there were some talks about maybe Evans knew that this was, kind of like writing on the wall. The Bucks blew a several games lead in the NFC South, only to relinquish that lead. And you gave 1 year for a mediocre coach that is Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield now, and it's certainly it's a stunning decision, but certainly if you look at the context of things, maybe Evans wanted another shot at winning the Super Bowl. He won it obviously 5 years ago when Tom Brady was the quarterback in Super Bowl that was held in their home city in the midst of the pandemic, of course, back in 2021, beating the Kansas City Chiefs. But I think Tampa Bay is certainly in a transition period, losing a big leader, big time player, and a leader who was the face of the franchise for more than a decade, and then leaving like that. It's going to sting for many Bucks fans. Certainly, it's going to be weird seeing him wearing a burgundy and gold uniform. For many for the next couple of years. Certainly, it will be interesting to see how much he has left in the tank and how much he's going to help out the San Francisco offense, because obviously they need weapons. They don't have, George Kittle pretty much out of the year, I think, with a torn ACL, unfortunately. Kendrick Bourne, Juwan Jennings is out. Brandon Ayuk, I don't know what the hell happened to his career, but he's going to be released. He was already released, and I believe already signed with Washington. His career took a massive nosedive, and they certainly needed to fix that. So those are some of the most notable moves and in free agency, and it's going to be interesting how those signings do impact the upcoming draft, like you said, which is in about a week, which is about a month and week or so. From the, I believe, let me take a look. I believe from about a month from now, and then from the 23, 24, 25, along that timeline. So it's about basically about a month and a week from now. So very interesting to see how the team looks different. And, will there be any more moves, big trades that are going to, be consummated? It's going to be very interesting moving forward. All right. Let's move on to the next topic, of course, is the World Baseball Classic that has kind of has been an incredible tournament so far. Japan lost to Venezuela. Japan, of course, the defending champions. They were completely, upended by Venezuela 8-5. Watching that game yesterday as a Japanese American perspective, Yoshinobu Yamamoto did not look sharp. Gave up a leadoff home run to Ronald Acuna. And then at the bottom of the inning, of course, it was none other than Shohei Ohtani smashes a game-tying leadoff home run off Ranger Suarez. And then from that point on, it looked like, okay, maybe Japan has this thing in the bag. But, Yamamoto did not look sharp at all. In the next inning, he gave up back-to-back, doubles to quickly relinquish the lead. And then, he looked good after the third and the fourth inning. Of course, at Japan, unfortunately, as a Cub fan, I hate to see, Seiya Suzuki gets injured, head sliding there. I don't know what was the whole purpose of it after he walked in the bottom of the first inning, of course, and just really, really scary. And hopefully, personally, as a Cub fan, it's nothing more serious and he doesn't miss a significant amount of time. And I'm praying for that. But, the the replacement Shota Morishita hit a 3-run home run and then just immediately flipped the game 5-2 by the end of the third inning, of course. And it looked like the Japan had the game in the bag. And then, unfortunately, their Yamamoto was pulled after fourth inning, and then from there, just their middle relievers were basically consisted of starting pitchers who were just acting as relievers, which is very, very difficult in cases like this. They didn't have a lot of special middle reliever specialty guys who are used to pitching 1 or 2 innings. A lot of them unfortunately suffered a injury and they had to be left off the team. And you could see that guys that came off later, they were struggling. They were consistently falling behind the counts. They were just, I don't know if it was just a jet lag or, they're not used to, pitching in this environment, or just, pitching with a, Major League Baseball, which is known to be something that many Japanese pitchers tend to struggle because it's more slippery and the seams were stitched up a little differently compared to that of the baseball that is being used in Japan and all of that. But I got to tell you, Ken, Venezuela really took advantage of it. The atmosphere in Lone Depot Park down in Miami, home of the Marlins, that has hosted this tournament for the last couple of times, with the strong Latin America population down there, it felt like, Japan was just completely engulfed in the emotions, the energy that was being exuded from Team Venezuela and their fans. If I find it interesting because, this team, right now, I think a lot of the guys, including Shohei Ohtani and Seiya Suzuki themselves, they're at a peak right now. And, a lot of the guys who are on the team certainly are getting up there in age. And, Japan kind of like had their moments. They've always been a thorn on many countries' side. They've won 3 of this tournament, but it feels like, at least in the minds of many Japanese people and their experts, I think they got beat in their own game, which is certainly, small balls, using, running, bunting, and all that kind of stuff. I didn't see that from Japan, and I saw a little bit of that more from Venezuela than anything else. So, in a way, Team Venezuela with their contingent of MLB stars certainly were far more motivated, and it looked like Japan just didn't seem like, I'm not saying they didn't care, but it seemed like they just look a little better off from what I saw yesterday.
Well, I did see the game too, Stephen. It just was the fact that it was basically a home game for Venezuela, but also at the same time that Japan didn't lack for its opportunities there, and as you mentioned, they're up 5-2. It looked like they were in good shape, but then their bullpen just imploded, especially in the 6th inning. And that's when Abreu came up and hit a 2-run homer and then put them up 7-5. And then from then on, it was Venezuela pretty much cruising. I think it shocked Japan. They thought that when they went up, it looks like, hey, we can cruise. But Venezuela, just as you mentioned, they did a lot of things right. They did the little things right, especially in the late innings. Their bullpen was fantastic. Once they got down to 5-2, they shut down Japan. No chances. I don't think a runner advanced past second base once the bullpen started going. So I think for 6 2/3 innings, they did a fantastic job in holding Japan, which has a lot of firepower, as we know. It's just not Ohtani, but they have some firepower on that lineup. And Japan is now eliminated from the semifinals, and they would have been playing tomorrow night. They would have been playing Monday had against Italy, which is, by the way, a great story, by the way. Italy knocked off the United States, but also knocked off Mexico, and now they advance into the semifinals, and with that espresso and everything. So I think it's a great opportunity here for Italy. and they're going to be taking on Venezuela in the semifinals tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be the United States against the Dominican Republic, and that's going to be a fantastic atmosphere in Miami too. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So, but I got to say, Japan. I really thought that they were going to be into the finals once again, Steven. I thought they had a great path to go, and
Mm-hmm.
had they gone against Italy, I really do think they probably would have advanced into the finals, probably either against the United States or Dominican Republic. I don't think that it's really. I don't think it's a lock for the United States to get to the finals. They played some really
Dominican.
bad. They haven't played very good. They lost to Italy. They struggled against. I mean, they almost blew a lead against to Mexico.
Yeah.
They almost blew the quarterfinal game against Canada as well. So I would
Right.
not.
And they were trailing 1-0 against Great Britain too.
Yeah, I would not be surprised, Stephen, if the Dominican Republic, if they can put a lead and then they can like start and put some runs on the United States tonight. I wouldn't be surprised if the DR gets to the finals, and they would
No,
be.
not at all. Not at all.
They've won this thing before. They've won the World Baseball Classic before, so I wouldn't be surprised to see them get there. They've got a lot of great players on that team. So, but
Mm-hmm.
like I said, Japan. I think they thought when they were up 5-2, they said, "Okay, we got this. We finally get there." But I don't think they were ready for Venezuela's firepower because they just hit home runs left and right last night,
Right.
and and like I said, they did this. They did the little things right. Once they started getting the lead, they started, their defense played well. They kept Otani off the bases. They struck out Otani a couple times looking. So
Yep.
I got to say that they deserved it. It's not a shock. In Venezuela, they qualified for the Olympics with that win. And don't forget, this not only is this tournament deciding who gets bragging rights for the World Baseball Classic. This is also a qualifying tournament for the Olympics for a lot of teams. So
Yep.
Venezuela was really, I think they were extra motivated. They really wanted to get to the Olympics because they wanted to be part of this. And, Japan's already a part of it. We all know Japan's there. United States is going to be there because they're a host. But Venezuela had to qualify. And you know what? They deserve it. They deserve the win last night. And,
There's
Japan,
no question about that.
Japan has to, they have I think they'll be ready for the Olympics in a couple of years. Whether it's going to be professionals or not, we don't know. But as we mentioned last week, that's got to be collectively bargained. But we'll see what happens. By the way, in the Big Ten right now, one thing I liked about this, but that the fact we're on earlier is that we have a couple tournaments going on. The Big Ten tournament right now looking like Purdue is up 66-56 over Michigan. Michigan is expected to get the number one seed. And right now they'll probably still get the number one seed, but Purdue is playing very well, and it looks like the Boilermakers are going to get the automatic qualifier from the Big Ten. When all is said and done, there's about there's still 5:31 left, still plenty of time, but right now Michigan. I mean, these tournaments, Stephen, when you get to the college basketball tournaments, you're not like Michigan, but Purdue. And a lot of teams have to play like 4 games in 4 days, and sometimes you get tired. I mean, I was watching the I think it was was it the American? I think it was. I can't remember
Mhm.
which it was, but it was like it went it went 2 overtimes, and the teams were just tired. They were really tired.
Yeah.
It was like North Texas and Tulsa. So they're playing Conference USA. It was a Conference USA. So they're playing, and it was a semifinal game, and you could tell they had no legs. But interestingly enough. But anyway, let's get back to the World Baseball Classic. But I think
No problem. Yeah.
I think Dominican Republic has a good chance tonight, and I think Venezuela will probably advance, probably ending Italy's great story. But I think I think that baseball and Italy, interestingly enough, I think this will do a lot of things to motivate some people to play baseball in Italy. And it's normally, of course, it's known as a soccer nation and a basketball nation. And I think that maybe this will motivate some people to play baseball from now on. And interesting to see how that happens. But Yeah, I gotta say that I think the winner of tonight's Dominican Republic United States game is going to be the champion for the World Baseball Classic.
A couple of nuggets more from the World Baseball Classic. Certainly, Japan right now kind of like has to do some soul searching because they've kind of gotten it easy the last few years, the last few times. Certainly, playing at Tokyo, which is obviously certainly a big advantage for Japan. Certainly for MLB, it's a very important market, as we saw, Dodgers and the Cubs play their, opening day last year at this time, if you remember.
Right.
This is a very interesting conversation that is being discussed in Japan as well. For one, they haven't made a decision on, the pitch clock, the DH. In the Central League, which is the league that certainly still has pitchers batting ninth. That's kind of like an equivalent of a national league in America, in comparison to the U.S. Major League Baseball. Certainly, the ball is dead ball, which does not help the offense at all. There are things that Japan as a whole, as a country, I wouldn't say this is the beginning of their decline, but if you really, really think about it, the hitters outside of, Ohtani, Suzuki, and Yoshida, who are playing in the major leagues, Ohtani is like the unicorn. He is one of one. He is above all else. Suzuki had a very good season, but, again, as I said, his injuries kind of puts his season in doubt at the beginning of the season. He's a free agent, of course, at the end of the year. Certainly looking for a big contract, whether it's with the Cubs or somebody else. Yoshida hasn't really found his footing with, Boston. It's a deep team. Roman Anthony has emerged, of course, and as is Jared Duran. Of course, you live up in New England. Obviously, that's those are two very important key members to the Red Sox, and Yoshida's kind of like stock is kind of fading, unfortunately. Outside of those guys, Okamoto and Murakami obviously are the two, the next, key hitters who are expected to, play this year, starting this year. But, only those two guys are, currently are seen as the next, MLB, players. Certainly have a lot to prove, obviously, being their first year. Murakami, with all the hype, having won Triple Crown a couple of years ago, has had some injury-riddled seasons. Many are still questioning if he can hit a fastball here in America. That's normally touches about 100 miles an hour easily with significant amount of movements and stuff like that. Unfortunately, he only got 2 years when everybody expected a massive contracts. Certainly, his stock the last few years, obviously, with the injuries, has not helped. Very interesting to see how Murakami and Okamoto performs with their respective teams. I'm sure they're equally motivated after being eliminated so early. But at the same time, they have their, they have to perform to, help improve their own stocks as well as the the perception of Japanese hitters coming from Japan to America as well. They have to do that because, Ohtani alone can't, continue to play, forever. And of course, Ohtani's again, like one of one. He's a man of his own class, certainly. So you can't be comparing that to Ohtani or anybody else. It's kind of unfair. The pitchers themselves too, they have to, develop more specialty relievers. Again, as I said, the relievers were so many of them were injured. They had to use pitchers who are normally starters to pitch in the, like in the middle of the inning. Not something that they were really, really used to. And especially in a high pressure situation where you lose, you go home. And, I think a lot of the guys were not really had a time to get a claim to the American time zone, and certainly also the pitching, the balls that I was telling you about, which is slippery and smaller than compared to the Japanese pitching. The balls that they use in Japan, again, they were consistently falling behind the count, so they got no help from the home plate umpire. But those are some things that you have to kind of like get used to it, and unfortunately they never really had the time to showcase themselves. It does kind of hurt them in the short run, but in the long run, what does this loss mean for the Japanese baseball long term? That's something that I'm very curious to see how the Japanese players and the Japanese baseball organizations approach, because you can't rely on Ohtani forever. He's going to be 35 next time when the World Baseball Classic starts in 3 years from now. So also, as we were mentioning, the U.S. team USA was kind of laboring off and struggling.
Well,
and Mark DeRosa, I wanted to talk about Mark DeRosa, Ken. And Mark DeRosa in a game against Italy, it was completely flabbergasting, because he thought that after beating Mexico, they had to already qualify for the next round, which wasn't. And I think the way they trotted out their lineup against Italy was completely in reflection of maybe they thought, certainly how they already thought that they qualified, but it wasn't. And then by the time they realized, probably in the middle of the game, they realized, oh my God, we're getting our ass kicked by Italy, and we haven't qualified, and we have to rely on the results of Italy versus Mexico, in the score, the confounding scoring system about how many runs do they have to give up in order to win, and all that kind of nonsense.
Yeah.
So to me, Mark DeRosa, with all due respect, this is his specialty. He managed it 3 years ago. He manages again, because there's not a single person who is wanting this job for some reason. And then between that time, between the last World Baseball Classic and this World Baseball Classic, all he does is his morning show, I believe, on the MLB Network.
Yeah, he does. So he does MLB. He does he does the MLB Central along with Lauren Shahadi and Roberto Flores on MLB Network every day during the season.
So my question is, how much did Mark DeRosa destroy? I don't want to say maybe destroy, but hurt his reputation. I think he hurt his reputation significantly. And I think a lot of people like, it's World Baseball Classic, who gives a damn, But for a manager who's done this before 3 years ago, it's certainly not a good look for somebody who does this for a living, literally, and then who does talk about baseball for a living, And I know he does have a lot of people who thinks that he's a very good at his job, but I just don't know if, am I being a hypocrite to say he hurt his reputation and then say that, his stock or, whatever he says moving forward, it just kind of like, I don't know if I should trust his words or his opinion.
Well, I would say that I think that I don't say he hurt his reputation, but I will say that he didn't look good. It wasn't a very good optics for him to come on. He went on MLB Network and said, "Oh yeah, we're already in." Well, you're not. You should know this, and your staff should tell you this too. Even if you don't know it, your staff should tell you this too. I just think, really, to be honest with you, Steven, he's not very experienced as a manager. He kind of lucked out by getting to the finals 2-3 years ago. And I believe
it was for the Giants job that ironically went to another candidate, somebody who had coached, but that was actually at the University of Tennessee, not on the MLB level. So.
Right. But he had coached. But, the fact is that DeRosa is just, he doesn't have the reputation or doesn't have the career of being coaching. He went right to television, which is his right. He can do that. That's fine. That's what you want to do. But you know what? It was kind of a strange that he got named to manage Team USA 3 years ago, and they said, "Well, you did a kind of a good job, despite the fact he didn't." And he tried this, and the fact is that Some of his decisions 3 years ago were kind of questionable too. But like I said, because they got to the finals and they were one strike away and if Mike Trout gets a hold of one of Ohtani's fastballs and hits it out and gets a base hit, we're talking about Mark DeRosa being a hero, so as a manager. So, but yeah, it didn't help him. And, this year is a little bit different. The make of the players is a little bit different from 3 years ago. They still have a lot of firepower, as you mentioned. Roman Anthony is on there from the Red Sox. They of course have Aaron Judge, who's bailed them out a couple of times as well. But overall, you got to know how to manage your pitchers. You also can't just say, well, because we got this one in the bag and it's Italy, we're just going to put in a lineup that could be a double A lineup instead of your regular A lineup. And, they paid the price for it and almost really had Italy not Mexico, and Mexico had scored enough runs, the United States would have been out, and the criticism on DeRosa would have been a lot higher. It would have been a lot more intense. But because Italy bailed them out the following night by beating Mexico and beating them soundly, the United States is now in this situation where they can get to the finals again. So, but again, there's a lot of warning signs out there, Stephen, about this United States team. They like we mentioned, they haven't played very well. They haven't played a complete game. They've had to eke out wins, as I mentioned. Not only against they lost to Italy, but they also had to eke out a win against Canada. And hold on. And this Dominican Republic team, like I said, if they get a lead on the United States and, it caused Mark DeRosa to panic a little bit, they could be eliminated in the semifinals. But one thing I do want to mention, though, I would like to see that and I know that Japan is a big, important market for Major League Baseball, but I would love to see the Asian region go to Seoul or also go to Taipei for future ones, because those are very enthusiastic crowds as well. Maybe not as much as Taipei as it would be for as you see the crowds in the Tokyo Dome, and those. Of course, I got to experience that last year when I went to Tokyo. It was a great thing to watch, and I recommend to anybody going to Japan to see a game in the Tokyo Dome, watch a game out there. It doesn't matter if it's in Tokyo. Go out to even if one of the other stadiums in Tokyo. You just have to go to the Tokyo Dome. Although I will have to say, in the middle of 600% humidity, which I experienced in Tokyo in July, which is not a good place, and I'm gonna talk to my sister about scheduling trips in the middle of high humidity in Asia, of doing that. But I will say, I recommend you to go to see a Japanese baseball game, because it will change your life, and you will see similar atmospheres as you did this week, as you're seeing in Miami and in Houston for the Latinx community. But I love watching that, and but I'd love to see the Major League Baseball. They won't do it because they feel Japan is just the perfect place for it. But I would love to see them choose Seoul or choose Taipei or Taiwan as other places to host games in the World Baseball Classic. But as far as Mark DeRosa is concerned, Stephen, I think that he's got a. I think as far as I think he's going to be managing. I think he's probably not going to be the manager next time around.
No.
I don't think he's going to be there for the Olympics. But I do think that he's probably going to if he wants to continue as a manager, be taken seriously as a manager, he's got to tonight, because and he's got to show that he has some stones, because this he's really been lucky so far in this World Baseball Classic. Very lucky.
And tonight's game will probably going to tell a lot about, how much does Mark DeRosa learn from this mistake and how he manages. Obviously, some of the lineups have been questionable. The way that he puts it out there, playing one player here and then pull him out and put another player, in the next game. there's no really need to coddle anybody. There was no need to put Paul Goldschmidt over Bryce Harper
Right.
in that sense, in my opinion. So tonight will tell a lot about how much did Mark DeRosa learn from this this embarrassing experience, and more importantly, how much does this U.S. team, the U.S. players in particular, care about representing the United States. There's no question that talent is probably the best in the history, not just for the USA, but overall in the World Baseball Classic. But it's been widely deadpan versus, the way the Dominicans, the Venezuelans, and, the other countries have shown a massive emotions, which would unfortunately would result in a brawl in the Major League Baseball regular season games. The U.S. has been widely criticized for their, more like a, business as usual, business type approach, in the way they played. Also, the fans, of course, the way they've reacted as well versus, Dominican, Venezuelan fans as well. It's really lacking significant character and all of that. I'm also very curious to see. Go ahead, Ken. I'll let you finish that one.
Yeah, and also too, you saw how much the emotion meant to Venezuela when Abreu hit his home run to put them ahead. The entire dugout came out. He did that bat flip. The entire dugout came out. It was just like they had this meant a lot to them. You could tell this meant a lot, and especially when they won last night, they were just celebrating. It was as if they won the world. They won a gold medal because they knew they beat Japan, which was
Sure.
a big, and they know the reputation of Japan, but also qualifying the Olympics. You saw how much it meant to them. And Mexico fans were just fantastic. Contrary to what we've seen with the Mexican soccer fans, but the Mexican fans, when they're playing the United States, they were actually fun. They were playing the music in the stands, and I'd love to see more of that. In during the regular season. In regular American ballparks, we don't see it enough. And like I said, you hear chanting and singing and the playing, you just the fans really involved for all 9 innings in Japan. I would love to see that in the United States, but it's not at that atmosphere. And you try to do that in Fenway Park in Boston, you're probably going to get people fighting you. So but I'd love to see some more of that spirit that we were seeing in Miami and Houston during the major league season. Stephen.
Okay, so I'm gonna tie this into my the final word segment in terms of the representation. Certainly, the team Italy is made up of mostly, of course, Italian Americans, those who have, parents who've immigrated from Italy to America, grew up here in America, and so forth. About the representation aspect of it, because people are openly complaining about that. They're not really, so-called Italian, unquote. Italy does have a baseball league back home. They have several Italian players playing there, but certainly they pale in comparison to the the Italian Americans who play for Team Italy in this World Baseball Classic. Vinny Pasquantino is a big star. Of course, his teammate Jack Caglione was a top 5 pick a couple of years ago and starting to make his mark. Aaron Nola has been a very good pitcher for a long time. Dante Nori was a draft number 1 pick by the Phillies last year, as is, I believe Darren Fletcher, who was a Brewers number 1 overall pick. Certainly, the name doesn't really screams Italian, of course. I'm bringing this up because my favorite team, sports, one of them, soccer. There's this one prospect that the U.S. and Germany are currently haggling over. His name is Noah Kai Banks. Banks said he wants to play for the U.S., has said that before. And certainly, I think given the lack of depth on the U.S. Center backs position, which is a position that he plays at being a defender, he's kind of like now wishy-washy about representing the U.S., playing in a World Cup in the home soil, which is obviously certainly a highest honor for somebody who's only 18, 19 years old and still growing as a player. I'm going to play a clip here about, not exactly the kind of people that I want to really promote by any stretch of the imagination, Tim Howard and Landon Donovan, about this current situation. I want to kind of tie into this. Take a listen to what they have to say recently about the situation. Here it is.
All of the people who run U.S. Soccer and support U.S. Soccer, and two of those supporters are you and I. Oftentimes, when players have to decide between the U.S. or the other country, you actually see them going, I ain't good enough to play for the other country.
Yeah.
I ain't good enough. I might could get a sniff. I could go into one or two camps, but I ain't good enough to play for the other country. So by default, I actually want to go to a World Cup, and I want to get 100 caps. And I can do that with the U.S. team because they're not as good as my home country. That's just a matter of fact. What are the reasons behind certain players choosing the U.S.? The other part of it, I would say, LD, is when that happens, and maybe this was a byproduct of there being too many multinationals in the team at one time. It almost became aloof. Like training camps, and I don't remember how much of that you remember. Some of the training camps sort of like there was no pizzazz within the team, right? Just by like indirectly, you have players who English is their second language, right? So it's harder for them to sort of interact and banter, which is what you do on the inside of the group. So you then like cliques sort of form because that's where they feel most comfortable, right? And when you look at sort of our best U.S. teams, it's always been family and togetherness and this culture of banter and so forth. And we missed out on that. And again, that's not the fault of any of these players. That's human nature, how people interact or don't. It causes its own problems when someone doesn't just jump at the opportunity to play for the U.S. when they're like, I'm all in. When there's a decision to be made, there's a balance.
Yeah, my struggle is, look, I'm a dual national. My dad was born in Canada, so it literally never once occurred to me to even contemplate playing for Canada because I feel American. I am American. I can understand some of these kids. I mean, Noah Kai Banks is an interesting one because he was born in America,
right,
but he grew up in Germany. So my guess is, and I'm just guessing, that he feels more connected to Germany. Like that's, if you grow up in a place, of course you are. So this is really challenging. And the problem I have with all of this stuff is, well, there's a few. I mean, in the past, and I know from U.S. Soccer now, speaking to some people, this does not happen anymore and it should never. People were promised places on the World Cup team if they joined, right? And so that no longer happens, which is a good thing. The challenge I have is if you have to recruit someone and convince them to play for your national team, that's a problem. Tim, I swear on my life, I would have cut off my hand to play for our national team. And most people would. So I understand. I have compassion for the situation Noah Kai's in. Really, you need to dig deep and say, okay, who do I really want to play for? And the challenge for him is, to your point, like maybe he can't play. Maybe he won't play for Germany. Maybe he's not good enough. We don't know. He's 18. We'll see.
With respect.
Okay, my apologies there, Ken. You and I are in a somewhat of a unique position. I was born in the U.S. I've lived in Japan, Germany, and India. I spent I spent most of my life living overseas. Ken, you were originally born, where was it?
I was born here and lived most of my life here. So I do feel more American than I do, but I still, of course, have some affinity for Taiwan, which is where my parents were born. So, but in regards to Malachi Banks, again, tough situation. And again, we don't know his feelings, but if he wants to play for the United States, but again, it depends on the German Federation if they want to have him play for them. But again, it's interesting. I've heard Tim Howard. That's the most coherent I've heard Tim Howard speak on anything, because on TV he's just so bad. That's the first. If we get that Tim Howard there, as passionate as he was in that podcast with Landon Donovan, as I said, on Premier League television, Premier League on NBC or USA. I think he'd be a great analyst, but he's just he's just not that way. He's just very stiff. But it's interesting situation, Stephen. I'm we had this when back in 2010 and 2014 with the coach with the manager who was German. And we had
Klinsmann.
Yeah, Jurgen Klinsmann.
2010 it was Bradley.
Yeah, 2014 when he had a lot of German nationals coming over,
Right.
and that's fine. That's what he knows, and he tried to tap in to some German nationals who were playing, who were in Germany but also had dual nationality. So he was trying to do that. So I think that's what both Landon Donovan and Tim Howard were referring to at the time. So I think that's an interesting situation, but again, representation does matter. But again, if you're trying to get a guy who is more tuned to another country and try to play here, and again, it goes to the Olympics too. We've seen this in the Olympics as well. Elaine Gu, representing China rather than the United States.
Right.
That's her choice. But it's interesting to see how this is going to play out. He's 18.
Right.
We'll see how it goes out. But would I like to see him play for the United States? Sure, but again, he's got that dual representation, that dual nationality. He's most likely, I think, Germany. If they feel that he's good enough, will want him to play for their country, and he may get
True.
he may be stuck.
Well, I'm not going to blame Banks if he chooses to go with Germany.
Exactly.
Germany has had strong history in the international stages, tournaments, whether it's Euro or World Cup. Certainly, they're more closer to winning the World Cup than U.S. Even this upcoming one. As I'm posting an article where Vinny Pasquantino ripping at people who are accused, criticizing him for being an Italian American, not like a genuine Italians who are on the team. Certainly, the genuine Italians playing baseball in their home country certainly does not get the attention or the support that they really deserve versus, the ones here in America. Good for Vinny Pasquantino and Jack Caglianones of the world, deciding to represent their the countries that their parents were originally from, and it certainly has nothing to do with the fact that they're not good enough to play for Team USA. Of course, they chose this opportunity to play in the World Baseball Classic, which certainly has made Italy the great story, and I commend them for that. There's no question about it. Nolan Arenado, the great third baseman and a future Hall of Famer, once played for Team USA and now play for Puerto Rico. In this tournament, is there anybody upset over it? No. I mean, certainly, I think it's a great representation. For them to go back to their roots, that the countries that they're familiar with, and losing somebody like Banks is a big blow to the U.S. soccer, because certainly, again, as I mentioned, the center back depth is very, very thin. And, you have, in the future, you're going to be competing with, the Mexican Americans and the other dual citizen Americans for their spot in the future, USMNT moving forward. Because, after this World Cup, I don't know how long will Christian Pulisic be able to play at a high level. Weston McKennie, Tyler Adams of the world, they're peaking, certainly, as they're, in their late 20s right now. How much of a motivation do they have after, playing for the World Cup here in the U.S., and how much do they care about it? You got to have to start thinking about the future. And, when you have to recruit dual players, you're going to have a stiff competition. They're torn about representing the U.S. or, the countries that their mother and father are originally from. And unfortunately, it's going to get more weaponized because of the, the current state of the world that we live in, with the way the U.S. is being, hated and, unfortunately being disdained, certainly around the world, unfortunately, with the way they treated the immigrants and so forth. So it's going to be a hard sell. I would never blame anybody, even if you and I both had children who are good enough to represent their countries, on either one of them, in the sport or any types of situations, whatever they feel comfortable with, they should do what they feel comfortable with, in my opinion.
Right. I agree with that. I mean, if let's say I married an Australian woman, and I have a swimmer who's good, and then the Australia, whether the son or the daughter wants to represent Australia over the United States, I'm not going to begrudge them because they feel that's where they feel much closer to. So again, it's up to them, and you have to that situation. Interestingly enough, Stephen, in the Italian team, there's only 3 native-born Italians who are playing on there, but
Right.
you never know. I think this is one of those things where the success of Italy could inspire some more people in Italy to play baseball. It's kind of like how the United States hockey team in 1980 inspired a generation of players. And again, it kept going. The momentum kept going. The 96 team that won the World Cup of Hockey inspired more players to play. And then now it's down to this generation where, of course, they won the gold medal against Canada. And we'll probably see more kids play. So it's all about inspiring the next generation. And if the success of Italy in the World Baseball Classic can do that, then I think Major League Baseball will feel they have tapped another market, which I think is which is the whole point of this whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, let's close off with a quick one. College basketball tournament. Certainly the selection Sunday will be taking place after the top of the hour. We won't stay that long. Give me your quick picks. Give me 3 teams that you feel comfortable naming them as the national champions right now.
Well, I was going to say UConn, but they played a stinker against St. John's last night in the Big East tournament. Florida, surprisingly to me, got blown out by
Vanderbilt yesterday.
So I really don't trust them right now. Michigan got beat today by Purdue, and they, of course, I think that's an aberration. I think Michigan is deserving of a number 1 seed. Overall, number 1 seed, I think probably go to Arizona because they won.
Oh, really? Not Duke?
Yeah. No, I do. I think Arizona or Duke. But I think Arizona will probably be the number 1 overall seed. But I probably the committee will go with Duke. I have to admit I have anti-Duke bias, so I don't want to see him as an overall number 1 seed. But I do think that I don't want to see Duke win again. I don't want to see Duke win. John Shire has managed, continued. I thought when he came in, he would come in. Duke would fall off, but he's got them going. I mean, credit to him. He's adjusted in the NIL era, and Duke has done they won the ACC tournament, and they're looking very good. So, but I think Arizona has a good chance of winning if UConn can overcome their shortcoming that they had in the Big East tournament. They really got blown out last night. Knowing that Florida got blown out by Vanderbilt, they knew they could have played for number 1 seed, get the 4th number 1 seed. They did not. It's going to be interesting also about Miami of Ohio. I know they lost to UMass in the MAC tournament. They were 31-0. They will most likely get in. They'll probably have to play in the Dayton. And by the way, Bruce,
which is not a bad thing considering where they're located.
No, exactly. And Bruce Pearl, I don't know what his deal is, but trying to lobby for your son who's coaching at Auburn to try to get in the tournament. I know you have the power. You're working on television. Don't use the television to try and lobby for your son to get. And not only that,
worst nepotism of any kind, right there.
And his behavior at the SEC tournament, I mean, acting like his son is in a youth league soccer or whatever, yelling at referees. You're not helping your son. You first of all, you leave Auburn and you leave your son with nothing, and he has to try and pick up the pieces, and then you're trying to lobby for your son. That's like, that's like picking the cupboard bare and saying, hey, I've got great stuff in here. I'm trying to sell you some great antiques, but there's nothing there. So, Bruce Pearl has got to shut up. And, he's on CBS tonight, and he'll be on the selection show. He replaced Jay Wright, who's done a great job for CBS, but I don't.
Man, what a bad trade-off.
That was a bad trade-off. Bruce Pearl is
It's
just not my favorite guy over there. But anyway,
No, no.
it's going to be interesting to watch. As I mentioned, Michigan lost today. I still think that's not going to take them off the one line. And other, so I would say my three. If I have to choose my final four, Stephen, I would go Duke, Arizona, Michigan, and I will probably go. I'll say UConn. I would like to see it. All depends on the seeding, but also UConn is probably coming in. They're on the women's side. UConn's going to be the overall number one seed. They finished undefeated. They did a fantastic job this season. It's the UConn Invitational, like it was back in the early 2000s. Gino Auriemma's got a fantastic complete team. I would be surprised if UConn didn't have the number one seed in the women's selection show. Men's selection show is coming up at 6:00 Eastern time at the top of the hour on CBS. ESPN will have the women's selection show at 8. So and also the Oscars are coming up at 8:00. I really haven't seen any movies, but it seems to me that hopefully Sinners will get the best picture, and we'll be also watching USA and Dominican Republic in baseball tonight. So it's going to be interesting. We'll have a very interesting Sunday night, Stephen.
Absolutely. Quickly, my picks are Michigan, Duke, Arizona, and my dark horse would be Houston. I still think that Houston is a very talented team. They didn't finish on a high note, unfortunately, but I still think that Houston came close to winning the last couple of times, and I think this might be a very good shot at Houston for finally winning their title, and we'll be very curious to see what happens. Well, on that note, we're going to put a bow on this show. Once again, thank you so much for everybody who is kind enough to watch our show. 102 people, thank you very much. It was an earlier time slot than the usual, but we thank you for watching. Hopefully you get to enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening. As Ken mentioned, so many things to watch tonight, and whatever you choose, I hope you have a wonderful Sunday, and we hope to see you again next time. Hopefully this Sunday. Once again, we'll keep you posted on our X, especially from my end. And Ken, once again, thank you so much for joining me on this Sunday. I hope you have a wonderful Sunday, and hope to do this again next week.
Yeah, thank you so much for everybody. We'll keep you posted. Next week is up in the air due to some personal things, but if I'm around, we'll definitely do the show. Probably again early, maybe 6:00 Eastern time, 5:00 Eastern time. Let us know in the comments on the YouTube channel, and also with X with Steven and me on Blue Sky if you like us. Rather, what time you like to see us on. If you want to see us on early, we'll be very happy to do it. During the summer, we may do early as well. So we'll keep you posted. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great night.